Chef Erie here. So
Chef
glad
Erie.
you're here.
So glad you're here.
We had the fastest
2025, everybody.
Yes, you got Tim Stafford here,
Tim
co-host.
Yeah,
and Tim
co-host.
Is here, Figure Tennessee.
Daddy Mike co-host. Yeah, Daddy Mike Franklin, Tennessee. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We have survived a round of storms that provoked all sorts of tornado warnings, flash flood warnings. Craziness. We didn't even have school today, did we, Sevi?
No.
No, we didn't.
No,
But But you know what we do have today?
What?
Dr. Timothy Gombis.
Yes.
Yes. We have had a number of emails, social media comments, and just personal interactions that have all said that more Gombis is better. So we have heard your cries. We're going to talk. We ask our Patreon community for some questions. We've got 4 questions for him. The last one ties into something we started talking about last week, which is the idea of cruciformity. And then we're going to apply that in our conversation to how that plays out with people who don't see Christianity the same way. What's a cruciform response to people who aren't cruciform but claim to be Christian?
What are your thoughts on that?
What are my thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Oh, I have thoughts on that. But before we do that, guess whose birthday it was on April 2nd? Yesterday.
Is
Who?
Hannah B.
No, Hannah's is the 6th. Whose birthday was it?
Tim Stafford.
Tim
Yellow
Stafford's
hair.
birthday, yellow hair.
Baby.
Yeah. All right. You want to sing to Tim?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Ready?
1,
2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Yellow hair. Happy birthday to you. Sa. Happy birthday to Stafford. Sa.
Cha-cha-cha.
Happy birthday to yellow hair.
Wow.
Thanks, Steffi.
Yeah, that's what we got for you.
Yes. Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
It's the Steffi song.
At the Seth theme song.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, Timothy, as I was texting you yesterday, you had quite a long day for your birthday celebration. Let's hear about it. I think everyone wants to know, how does Tim Stafford celebrate his birthday? Happy 50th, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're really glad you're joining the club.
I did about 5 hours of one-on-one conferences with students, and then went straight to launching our first Auburn Wellness Committee, and
Which
then came
is?
home and laid in bed.
Yeah, this is
Trying
such
to
a
figure out. Well, it's one of my buddies and I that I went to high school with. Not a Christian guy. We just were having conversations about, after we did the school board thing and a couple other things that we did politically in our area, some that worked and some that failed. When this last election happened, we were kind of like, what can we do to be proactive in our community at large? And we meet a lot of people who are just like, I don't know how to meet people. Like, I'm lonely. I'd like to meet some other folks, just, as acquaintances. So we're like, well, let's launch something that first builds community with people that you may not normally meet. And then from there, as we grow, network out to see what the larger community of Auburn itself needs. So, we have someone who's very close to us who works with World Relief and helps settle a lot of refugee families. And oftentimes they don't have enough hands to do the work. So it'd be like 2 of us will show up. And it's like, well, what if we had 15 and, many hands make light work? Or someone who works with the homeless population here. And I've talked about here how much the town complains about the homeless here, but there's never anything constructive about what to do to help or to bring people out of that. So it's like, well, what can we do? What can we do what can we do with manpower to come alongside organizations that are already doing good work? So
yeah, I love that.
Stuff like that, build community and
wellness community.
The Auburn Wellness Committee.
Gather, learn, do. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what we tried to do last night. So we got together and met people. And
I love that.
We gave like a little 5-minute spiel about kind of why we had started this, and then asked people what they were looking for or what they thought they were coming to or why they showed up. And so we got a few responses from that. So
yeah,
we'll see where it goes from here. It was, fairly loose last night. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I love that, man.
Like I said, and when you'll hear with Gombis, I just I can't people hear me talk on here. I feel like I'm spinning wheels in mud a lot of the time. And I want to try to be more intentional with how to like be here. And so, we've talked on the podcast for years now about being active in your local and not stressed out about the national or whatever, or things that you can't necessarily affect immediately. So I'm trying to put that into practice, see what happens.
I love it, man. I'm proud of you. That's awesome. Auburn Wellness Committee. I love it. I love it.
It sucks because one of my friends, he started that as like just like a text thread with all of us for different things. And then when we started talking about doing this, I texted that guy and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry, but there's only one name that works for what we're about to do. And it has to be this. Yeah. And he's like, take it, go run. So
nice. Well, happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you.
I think there's no better way to celebrate than Seth Erre singing and Tim Gombis talking. And
one of my best friends is making me fried chicken tomorrow night.
Whoa.
I was like, I never do anything for my birthday. And so I told my wife, I was like, what if we had a dinner and invite some people? And my buddy, who's a really good cook and makes crazy fried chicken from scratch.
This noise is Seth's floppy, which he's doing
floppy
into the microphone. Yeah. There's a boy here. What, you got boogies, bud? Boogies.
Real life.
Get out of there. Get out of there. Get out of there.
Hey guys, go get flops who can.
Go get flops if you can.
Yes, get flops and play floppies.
Play floppies.
That's probably right. When the fidget spinner craze happened, and it was kind of to help some kids like focus or whatever. I had one in my pocket and I started taking it to school with me. And I was like, this is actually, it is soothing.
I have that cool video today.
You have a cool video today?
Yes.
What's that?
Okay, first get big shout out to my iPad.
First big shout out to your iPad?
Yes.
Okay, he watches our episodes on YouTube on his iPad.
Yeah.
Okay, big shout to yes.
So this is past Seth saying hello to future Seth.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hey, so here
got
go.
Inception.
Big shout out to iPad.
iPad, shout out.
Big shout out to my iPad. A pair of Honduras doctors over.
Yeah.
Hey iPad. This for Honduras.
Honduras.
For you,
a video
for you.
for our youth group missions trip. Played Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine.
iPad.
He loves that.
iPad, that was for you.
That's for you, iPad. Okay. Thank you, Seth. Now we will on next Monday, he will hear this and we will then be in some sort of time loop. Okay, episode's getting long. Let's talk about Gombis and what he said next episode.
Yeah, let's unpack it because I didn't want to interrupt because you had good questions and he does his Gombis thing where he doesn't do short answers, which is why we love him.
Which we love him.
Always so like expertly nuanced and thought out, and he just brings the truck with it, which is always wonderful. But I have a lot of questions about just kind of some of the nuts and bolts of the questions that you asked him. I think that we could be interesting to unpack a little bit.
Love that. Let's do that. We're going down the cruciform path. And talking about two different kinds of Christianity. One is of Jesus and one is most certainly not. And how we should relate to both and to people who are following each and so on. So we get into all of that with Tim. Again, these questions, many of them were submitted by our Patreon audience to whom we are so grateful, and Tidely folks as well who generously support the community. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah. And we'll toss out one more time. I think we had like 450 new people join the private Facebook group. So
wow.
Just throw it out one more time. If people are interested, people were talking on there today and asking questions and being a little bit more communal than it has been in the past. So maybe it can be a positive thing. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Jesus take the wheel. That's all we got. All right, friends, here's Mike and the Tims with a shout out again by Seth. Okay, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Tim Stefford. Yellow hair blowing.
Yellow hair.
Hit that Honduras video you can't, please.
He does not have the Honduras video, but I appreciate your tenacity. Okay. Your singular focus, Seth Erre.
Bye, see you guys. Peace out, guys.
Peace out.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, by popular demand at least by the two of us, and one person emailed us and said we need more Gombis. So 3 of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Gombis. Dr. Timothy Gombis, PhD, University of Aberdeen, St. Andrews, or Durham. One of those.
Yeah.
I think it's
St. Andrews, please.
I know. Is there some snobbery there?
Not really.
There?
Hey, junior colleges are respectable places to get degrees from, and nobody should ever look down their noses at them. That's just not cool. Those are fine schools.
That's it.
I went to like 4 of them.
The continental arrogance. So we are delighted to see you, Tim. We literally just saw your face. We said hello. Seth said hello. And then, how are you? What have you been doing?
Yeah.
How's your day? Where are you teaching? What's happening? Are you going on long walks? Do you avoid small talk?
Yeah, we're on spring break, and I just got back from seeing my parents in Chicago and one of my sisters, so we hung out for a couple days. Well, not really. Yeah, a couple days, and just drove
Did you
back.
Drive?
And nasty weather on the way up there, and not so bad weather.
How fast?
How fast?
Yeah. What was your top
pushing
speed?
it. Pushing it.
I mean, yeah.
We're
How many?
Moving. I honestly, I'm so committed to sending good juju out into the world. I pass. I don't look. I don't flip off anybody. I don't.
Yeah.
Some guy recommended like passing and going like this. And people just cruise in the left lane. Just don't flip them off, but like just the downward thumb, which I think is great. But I don't do that. I don't do anything. I just disapprove internally, and But yeah, I move. I move on 65.
I mean, would you say the car of choice traveled north of 100 miles an hour at any point?
Yeah, that would
on
happen.
The drive back.
Honestly, I keep it under control. It's it's a controlled aggression. I'm an assertive driver. But
I want to put a GoPro on whatever car it is that you're driving. So you just got back. Speeds north of 100 miles an hour, thumbs down, being presented to people who are driving in the left lane slowly.
Yeah, it's a scourge.
And when you're going 100 miles an hour, everybody is slower.
Yeah, well, I don't go that fast, but I definitely, I want to be in control of the left lane to an extent. I don't like people being in front of me, and especially, if you're going under 10 over, you should not be in the left lane. That's just the reality. So in the Midwest, in the Midwestern states, the speed limit is often 70, and the degree of sort of like wiggle room is 10. Is I believe 10.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry for that whole digression. I'm fascinated by your driving habits. We've heard rumors.
Well, I operate a rocket ship. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly right. And time with parents was
good. Really good.
Time with family.
Yeah. Things have been really good. We're just got done teaching a course for Northern Seminary with our friend Nijay Gupta. That was really fun. And then started a course for Fuller just this week. It's kicking off, and then 2 more months of teaching with elementary school kids, which has been good. It's been good. It's been a challenge, but it's been good. That's been
it's rare you have those two professions just juxtaposed back to back. I'm teaching seminary students and elementary students,
and it's not
in
bad.
The same life.
I really have enjoyed. So over the last year and a half, I've been all over the district, subbing like a day at a time or like 2 weeks at a time. And now I'm in like going on like 4 months, and I've been able to get to know like the rest of the staff, and it's been really fun. Like to develop relationships and just have fun, and just be a fun person, to kind of lighten up everybody's day and that kind of stuff. Like randomly just bring in a couple dozen donuts. I don't know. Life is a grind. Anybody's job after a while is a grind, and I like being that sort of force that can enter into a situation like that, a social setting, and just spark a little bit of life and goodness, and crack a joke to make someone's day.
Unless they're on the road, and then you're not a spark of
Yeah, do you
joy.
bring the thumbs down?
This is why I'm saying I don't send bad juju out
faculty
into the
lounge?
world, and I don't shame people for just their shoddy
When
driving
Daryl
habits.
takes 2 donuts that you brought, do you just give him the?
Oh,
Daryl.
never would there be any shame for like multiple donut snatching. I mean, it's just like
Okay, that's
there are
good.
so
That's
many
good.
acceptable behaviors. Yeah, I don't shame people for their behaviors. I just move around them, and they know what they've done. I don't need to send them a message.
Now Nijay was on a couple of episodes
cool.
ago, and he said, excuse me, that you laid down a political, in the Revelation class. It was some sort of political theology from Revelation that was just mind blowing.
Oh, wow.
Does that ring a bell?
We had a good time, and yeah, it was really, that's intimidating Revelation. So I mean, I'm glad to hear that because it was. I mean, it's just like, what do I have to say about Revelation? But one of our signed books was Michael Gorman's book, which is
Reading
just,
Revelation responsibly.
I don't have anything more to say. It's like where and because Revelation's just always been a struggle. So I tried to bring a political angle, just extend out a little bit of what he was saying. But it was a great experience, and all the northern folks were really, really great. Enjoyed it.
Well, Timothy, on a scale of 0 being you're trapped in following a line of cars in the left-hand lane going 55 in a 70.
Oh, man.
So that's 0, and 10 being you get to shelter in place for the rest of your life and not have to interact with any random stranger. That's 10. How excited are you to be on the VOXOLOGY podcast?
Oh, yeah. This is right up
That's
there.
where we were
That's
going.
the question.
This is right up there with a quarantine order. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
We might be
I'm just
getting here
checking.
soon in the Midwest. I mean, it's thunder and lightning right now.
Oh, us too.
things
Holy
pretty
moly, it's going crazy. Yes. They move to Tennessee, they said.
Yeah.
And they canceled school today because it was debris, flash floods, tornado warnings, the whole thing. Except, can I complain for 1 second? This total Midwest insider, I'm sorry, we'll lose listeners. I don't care, but I have to get this off my chest to my friends, Tim. What they call in the Midwest, when they have a tornado warning, that meant a tornado is on the ground. Okay. So that meant tornado warning is like, dude, there's something here.
Yeah.
Do something about that. In Tennessee, they call a tornado warning if clouds, on the radar, it looks like clouds are beginning to spool up.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to have a tornado on the ground. So last night, 3 different, like 2 something, 3 something, and 4 something, we get tornado, activations and alerts on our phone. And then you're like, oh, but there isn't one out there. Now, there might be.
Yeah.
I mean, it might turn into one.
Yeah.
But can I just, for my way of thinking, yes. If it's just clouds that look bad, just call it clouds that look bad.
Yeah.
But a warning, man, that means it's here, guys. I'm not going to shelter in place because clouds look funny.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion, guys.
Get it.
I'm sorry.
Tornado triggered.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to get political, but that's just where I'm going to go.
I totally
Thanks,
get
Timothy.
Yeah, regions respond so differently to all this kind of stuff. I remember as a Midwesterner moving to LA back like 30 years ago, and I remember there was in January like a light drizzle, and someone was commenting about braving the winter storm. I was like, winter storm? What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I remember the first time we got rain. So I'd moved from Ohio to Los Angeles. The first time we'd got rain, there were over 500 accidents in the first hour.
Sure.
And it was because the film, they don't get rain enough. So the road film is very oily and slick. But I just thought, okay, this is a whole new ball game, guys.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a drizzle. So I'm totally with you. Tim, you've got nothing to add. And Tim, I mean Stafford. Now, the rumor is that there is a high quality podcast that has rejoined the podcast market. And let's hear a little bit. I mean, we've talked about Faith Improvised before, but all of a sudden it's shown up on my feed as new.
Really?
What's happening?
Oh,
yes.
just like a new episode.
Like new episodes.
Yeah, just got busy. over the fall and winter, and just thought I'm want to get things rolling again. So I was teaching a course on Ephesians for Fuller starting, like I said, this week. So I wanted to get my mind back into it. So I restarted the podcast, or just I got off hiatus. I was on hiatus.
Yeah.
For a while. Took a little break, and it's one of those things that I like doing it when I like it. And I
unlike this here podcast where
love
you're just
doing this when
lavishly
I love
devoted.
It. And so it's like I'm ready to get back into it. For me, it's like it's so important for me to keep a fairly even pace of life, and for me, jumping into full-time, long-term teaching in this one situation was for a couple months pretty jarringly overwhelming. And so I was like, I just sort of bewildered, and every day coming home and staring at the wall for an hour before waking up. So I just kept myself in a pretty good pace of life, and now I just feel like I got a handle on that, and I'm ready to get back to doing this, which is it's been really fun.
Love it.
Yeah,
dude.
I like that pressure of having to. I like the pressure of staying, sort of intellectually fit and mentally fit, and keeping at something. So it keeps me reading what I like to be reading, keeps me thinking about stuff. So it's good to get back into it.
To our listeners, if you are new to this here podcast, Dr. Timothy Gombis, preeminent New Testament scholar, dissertation was on the divine warrior motif in Ephesians. That turned into a book called The Drama of Ephesians, which is phenomenal. So Ephesians is a bit of a specialty, and he's going through that. Hello, Seth, on YouTube, waving in the background. So for those of you not on YouTube, the Ephesians. Oh yeah, this is
That's
so
right.
we're going through it. Ephesians. This is how he does it.
Ephesians.
Ephesians. So there are hand motions that go with that, just in case
Totally
anyone's wondering. Yeah. So Faith Improvised is a podcast, and the good Dr. Gombis has some great stuff to say about that. We queried our Patreon community for some questions. We want to talk about cruciformity in a little bit. We just started we're talking about what it means to be the church. If our sensibilities are more on the Anabaptist side around the way the church is political in the world is by being the church, and not trying to transform the world. What does that mean? And so we looked at a community of justice. We're looking at cruciformity, and then we'll look at new creation after Richard Hayes's kind of three exhortations or whatever. But I've got a couple of questions before we get to cruciformity tonight that I thought were just interesting. Given your work exploring the intersection of New Testament teachings and contemporary culture, particularly in areas like race relations, how do you see the role of biblical interpretation in addressing current social challenges? I can read that again for you. Given your work exploring the intersection of New Testament teachings and contemporary culture, particularly in areas like race relations, how do you see the role of biblical interpretation in addressing current social challenges? Now, perhaps I could sharpen this a little bit. I don't know if this is what the questioner meant, but so many of our debates, culture war debates, have Bible verses attached to them. And if it's just a Bible on Bible conversation, how do you know your interpretation's the right one? I don't know if that's what our questioner is asking. So how do you hear that, and what would you say?
Man. Well, there shouldn't be. To me, there's a sort of a false assumption at work to imagine that biblical interpretation doesn't address social situations. Like, I mean, to think biblical interpretation is a task of interpreting a whole range of biblical texts. So like the 5 books of Moses, the writings, the histories, the poets, the poetry and the prophets of the Old Testament, the Gospels, Acts, and the letters of the New Testament that were all addressed to social situations to transform them. If we're thinking about the 5 books of Moses, to set the template and the agenda of God's justice. And then from then on, because it just kept going off the rails, all the writings are addressed to bring about God's justice for communities that call themselves God's people, but are not embodying God's justice. So the only thing they do is address social situations. So to my mind, there's no way organically. You have to justify a way of interpreting the Bible that resists addressing social situations, because that's the only thing the Bible does. The only thing that the collection of biblical texts does is address social situations to bring about God's justice. So if you can imagine a way of reading the Bible that doesn't do that, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? You are resisting. I mean, what I would say, I love Kevin Van Hooser. I'll just sort of extend out a bit of kind of what he talks about in a different conversation. But like, you're basically deforming biblical interpretation. You're hamstringing it. You know what I mean? I mean, really, to use a word that's unfortunately loaded in other situations, you are retarding biblical interpretation. You're bending it. You're sort of like, there's like a natural growth of an organic plant, and you're like putting asphalt over it so it does something else, so that it's bent out of shape, which, drawing on Willie James's amazing work in the Christian imagination, is what the European colonizing project had to do in order to interpret scripture within the project of colonizing other parts of the world, basically savaging and ravaging the rest of the world. But in my field, New Testament interpretation, the gospel writers are recording, the life and teachings and agenda of Jesus, which are all about extending out and calling God's people back to God's justice, regarding social class, regarding people with disabilities, regarding people who are outcasts, marginalized, overlooked, and forming a people into a radically and scandalously inclusive community that embodied and practiced the ongoing justice of God, which is a never-ending project. It's this ongoing dynamic of justice and good doing. And then the letters are all about, nearly every one of them are addressed to communities where embodying God's justice as the New Testament people of God has gone off the rails in some way. And they're all addressing becoming God's embodied social justice visibly and practically. And so, and for Paul specifically, I mean, that's my field. So what I began to notice like years ago is, why is it, I just was struck by this reality that every time Paul articulates what we had considered the heart of his gospel, he immediately transitions to this triplet: social class, ethnicity, which we would extend out to race in our modern world, and social class. So it's like these are three categories that Paul is always thinking about when he talks about.
You said social class, ethnicity, and then you said social class again. Did you mean gender? Yeah.
Gender. So like realities of gender in our world, realities of social class in our world, and realities of ethnicity, which we can also include race in that. These are the things that Paul imagines his gospel has everything to do with those things, only to do with those things, and it has to do with those things. So if there's any imagination for disconnecting that reality, it seems to me you have to explain that in some way. Like, how do you see that as a connection that needs to be made when the apostles join those? And then also, like if you think about James, so like if you think about what's going on in the first century church, that Paul is this radical outsider to Jerusalem, that he's this like wingnut that has to, we're sorry about this guy. So James, Barnabas, Peter, John, they're all the Jerusalem people. Their letters are all saying the same things. I mean, James is addressing social justice, where in the churches that he sends his letter to, there's breakdowns between wealthy and poor Christian, Jewish, Christian, Jewish Christians. And so there it's all about social class. And Peter's all the same, and the Gospels are all the same. And I mean, with the Vox Orange County crew, we're going through Luke and Acts over these 2 years, and it's again and again and again. It's like these are just realities that stare you in the face. So I understand that in the modern world, especially in modern America, where there's such intense resistance to sort of hearing voices of others, or hearing the Bible sort of read or talked about from kind of a social justice perspective, because it seems so foreign. It's really unfortunate, but what I would rather say is, well, since this is the only thing that the biblical writers are doing, and Jesus and the God of Israel, since this is the only thing they're doing, what is it about our interpretive tradition or our national tradition? What is it about our sentiments and our feelings and our own makeup that is resistant to this?
That's it.
And then what I would want to say is, how do you know if you have contesting interpretations? Like, how do you know who's being political, who's being sort of an objective reader of the Bible or whatever? What I would want to point to is how it is that consistently in the Old Testament, God warns people who have social leverage that he is not hearing their prayers. Like, I don't hear you. You cry out to me. You're not going to find me. I'm gone. I hear the cries of the oppressed. I hear the cries of the oppressed who aren't even from Israel. I hear, and then in like Matthew 25, like he is among the foreigners. He's among the poor. He's among those who are incarcerated. And Peter warns about this, about prayers being hindered. And what I've been noticing, what we talked about in Acts just several weeks ago, they're really looking forward to your visit, Tim, which your yearly Easter visit. But what we talked about in Acts, one of the summary statements in Acts chapter 4 is, there was the grace of God was so powerfully at work among them that there was nobody needy in their midst. Yeah. And what's really interesting to me is, we were talking about, you have all these Jewish groups in Jerusalem that are contesting interpretation. The God of Israel is completing his story among us, the Pharisees. The God of Israel is completing his story among us, Essenes. The God of Israel is completing the story among us, Sadducees, the priestly class. And the followers of Jesus are making their claim, and the evidence is the needy are looked after. Social class realities. So it's like this, it's on every page of our Bible. So to my mind, it's the most natural way of listening to these texts is to see what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're not, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Why are you not listening?
Related question. Paul often interpreted the Hebrew Bible in creative ways to make theological points. For instance, 1 Corinthians 10:4, they drank from a spiritual rock that followed, and that rock was Christ. With such examples of creative biblical interpretation inside the Bible, how did a tradition of rigid literalistic interpretation survive and grow throughout Protestantism?
Oof. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a really good question.
That's a great question.
I think that I think a lot of this comes out. I mean, just in the history of interpretation, there is a sense in which the interpretive moves that, like the church fathers, we call them, or interpreters throughout the ages would have made, who were working inside the church, reading the Bible for the church, throughout the centuries, all the way up until probably like the 1700s, we're doing the very same things, like reading the Bible from a variety of perspectives, like trying to respect the historical realities or the literary realities, like the surface reading of the text, but then also always doing like spiritual readings always reading
allegorical readings.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, because I think that what they always were convinced of is that God, the Holy Spirit, is always speaking to the church and speaks to the church in his word and is always moving the church toward love of God, love of neighbor. And however we can hear the text afresh and in creative ways that fosters that, we want to hear it. We want that. And then with the rise of the modern academy and the university, when the study of the Bible went into the universities, these concerns of like churchly readings of the Bible just fell away in the academy. And so like historical critical methods were prioritized above everything else. And then inevitably that seeped into how pastors and seminaries were teaching pastors how to do it. And so those kinds of readings were prioritized, unfortunately, because while there's great value in that way of reading the Bible in the academy, that way of hearing scripture in churches is just, it's really deadly. I mean, it's not like it's deadly to faith because it makes you question things. There's no life in it, really. It's like questions of like, how many, what color hair did the Hittites actually have? What can we know from archaeology? Or, what did the Philistines actually smell like? Or I don't know, just stuff like this. I mean, historical questions that are, how much body hair did the Philistines really have? You need to know this, on the cover of Time magazine. Well, I mean, this is all like
minds want to know.
Yeah, exactly. You make the call. So these are all like historical questions that are not, they don't foster Christian faith. That they're like questions could be interesting, like how far of a day's travel is it from this town to that town? Okay, that's a fact that it has value when you're reading text, but the way the fathers were always reading scripture was to foster and make Christian faith flourish. So when you are if you're teaching the Bible and you're in your study trying to understand a text, you might need to know, how long was a day's travel in the ancient world? Okay, fine. But just to pile up facts from the ancient world doesn't foster Christian faith in church settings. And I think that generations of preachers were sort of taught to read the Bible that way and thought that teaching in churches that way had value, and then prioritizing that kind of interpretation had value. So, Paul does some really, what he's doing is sort of addressing the social situation of the Corinthians there, drawing on Moses addressing his unjust social situation, and kind of like mapping Moses's excoriation of Israel onto his own jeremiad against the Corinthians, and he's sort of laying them on top of each other, and he's sort of mapping analogies, and he says like that rock was Christ, talking about how the source of life is dwelling in the midst of the Corinthians, and they're living in ways that are defying him. They're going to pay consequences just like the Israelites. So they should I love that. Kind of like map your community into this Old Testament situation and look around you. Look around at what your companions are, all these disobedient Israelites. Is that the company that you want to be among? So in a lot of ways,
but see that, can I interrupt you? That right there. So I would, the question that would preoccupy me would be, well, was that rock Christ? Right? That's the historical, factual, literal question.
Yeah.
What you just did is allow that passage to sidestep. It's like saying, hey, is the flood universal or is it that's we're asking questions of the text that it's not answering, that it's not intended to answer. It's doing something else. So I love that. I think that's a great example.
Yeah. So if we imagine ourselves as trainees, that scripture is training us to read it, which I think is a great way to regard scripture. I'm in training to regard this thing. And it's like, oh, okay, all along I keep asking the wrong questions. There are questions that we should be asking rather than like, did this happen or is that actually the case? But in so many ways, think about I know you guys have had these experiences. I'm sure many other people have as well, but I've had a couple of these really powerful like Lectio Divina experiences where someone has read a passage. I think it was when John is baptized, and it just reads 8 verses. The person read 8 verses, and we're all kind of in a relaxed, focused, meditative space. And then she starts asking these questions about, like, you're standing on the bank of the River Jordan, the crowd is uneasy and bustling, and John comes up out of the water, or no, Jesus comes up out of the water, and John turns to you and asks this question. I mean, these kinds of experiences, and what does he say to you? Or like, you hear this lament that cries out to Jesus, and you're one of the people in the crowd, and like, how does that register with you? I mean, those are spiritual ways of reading scripture that allow those episodes to unsettle us, or to reshape us, or to comfort us, or to reorder us in certain ways. And I think that the appropriate ways to respond to those is like, okay, how is God interrogating my life? Or how might I move into a redemptive mode? How might I take redemptive steps as a result of this? Or how can I experience the love of God in new ways? I think you'd miss the point if you said, am I a Galilean? Like, do I know John the Baptist? I mean, like, what, are you serious? So it's like, okay,
what do I smell like?
Okay, that's a question. I mean, that's maybe a starting point, but hopefully you'd move on to better questions. Like, did the flood actually happen? Or did, like, how did things happen? Or did it really happen that way? Like, are those the best questions to really get at what's happening here?
Yeah. Speaking of facts, these questions just perfectly align and flow. If you could go back and ask Paul one question or verify one fact about his life, so ask him one question or verify a fact about his life, what would it be?
Oh, man.
7? Steffi's back chirping. Steffi's back here chirping, Tim. So.
Wow. Oh, man. Well, I would not want to verify anything about his life, I don't think.
Were you really single?
Yeah. I don't know.
Is there ever been a
are you going to be able to edit this to make me sound like I'm quick on my feet?
No. No, there's no help in this.
I honestly, okay, here's my honest thought.
We don't edit these.
Honestly, I had the great privilege of having Old Testament colleagues who are just wonderful, wonderful people over the years. I've known great Old Testament people, but like, there are some Bible scholars who are really boring people. I kind of wonder if I'd want. I'm really curious about Paul's writings. I don't think I'm very curious about him as a person. I just don't find that I'm curious. Maybe what I don't know. What was it like on the road to Damascus? I don't know. I don't know. Did it really happen that way? I'm not very curious.
All right.
I honestly, I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious about the interface of his writings and those situations and how we access those as Christian scripture. But like, I wonder if he was just a really, really off-putting person, Yeah. Like, if you imagine, if you imagine this, John, James, Barnabas, these guys in Niger, these people that are like big hitters in the early church, they're leaders. They were probably really fun to be around. You want to have beers with them, talk, laugh. Whenever they're around Paul, you can kind of always see them being like, oh, jeez. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I'd want to be around them. I honestly don't know.
You said that, you're like, picture this, and I don't know if your guys' brains immediately manifested an image or a person, but for some reason the first person that popped in my head was Larry David.
I would love to be around Larry
That's
David.
As Paul, but just like walking in, being like, kind of just calling things as they are, and
If
you know,
that were
maybe
the
not
case,
having the best tact or social cues.
if that were the case,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome. I'd want to totally hang out with him and be like, "What do you think of Peter? What's up with this guy? What's up with this guy?"
Then you should the music
seriously.
playing.
You know, give me the.
I'd
give me
love
the
to
dirt
know-
on James. What's up with this guy?
I'd love to know what Paul's experience of Jesus was like before the Damascus road.
There's
like,
a great question.
like did Paul sit in any of those places and observe Jesus and his disciples and cross his arms, shake his head? Hearing about the crucifixion, going, "Yep, I knew it. This guy cursed on a tree." Like, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to me.
Yeah, that's really good.
Larry David, though, would be a great. But Tim Gombis, this might be the greatest answer ever that you just gave.
I don't think I'd like
People. Well,
It's my gut. I don't know.
last one, and that brings us to our topic for this evening. First of all, we just thank you. We just think you're the best.
Oh, you guys are great.
No, you are. And yes, I've heard. I also have heard about Tim's yearly Easter address in Vox Orange County. What is it? 5 years now?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Trying
Like
to keep it fresh.
they have Gombis is kind of their regular diet, and then when they need a heavy hitter,
Mm-hmm.
they bring in
That's
Stafford.
exactly how it's framed out.
Man, I've been watching.
That's it.
When they need Barry Bonds, I've been watching loads of clips of him lately. He was
Barry
incredible. Yeah.
Bonds.
Are you on the juice
When
too?
do Giants fans just completely embrace him, or is he like an embarrassment?
I think at this point they do now. I think the call he got locked out of the last Hall of Fame
Yeah.
ballots, and now he's not qualified anymore. And so some fans are like, sign him for a day.
Yeah.
Guy can still hit. Like, bring him in for a day so he can like be thrown back into the conversation again. Everybody was
okay.
juicing. So if you're still the best, you're the best.
Yeah.
And he was the best before that too.
Totally.
So that was okay. So our juiced guy was better than your juiced guy is kind of the argument.
Kind of.
It's
I
really
like
too
that.
bad because I mean he just was incredible. The most amazing hands ever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. On that note, we're transitioning to our fourth question, which brings us to our topic.
Would you say that Barry Bonds was cruciform?
I think I'd want to
His
talk to
bad
Barry
is-
Bonds more than Paul, very frankly.
I'm getting that sense. And that's one of the reasons why people like you, Dr. Gombis. Could you define cruciformity?
Man,
Yeah.
I would describe it, I think. And I like that, person I learned it from, Michael Gorman, defines it, I think, rather than, or describes it more than like defines it. But it's very simply, it's just being in the shape of the cross. And I just follow his work. He talks about how it's a narrative pattern that's described in Philippians 2:6-11, which I think is fantastic. I can't improve on that at all. That it's a narrative pattern of having privileges, not exploiting those for personal gain, but operating in self-giving love. That is itself manifesting the exaltation of God in Christ and is the way to exaltation. Yeah, it's that narrative pattern, which I think is sort of like a core,
narrative
core
narrative pattern isn't helpful.
Pardon?
Narrative pattern isn't helpful as much as
It's a trajectory.
So what's it would look like? What would it look like in real life?
Yeah, well, I think that's where all of the discussions begin. That's like, I think it's a narrative pattern that we see in the pages of the text and in the life of Jesus, and it's a narrative. It's a communal reality that we see talked about in parable and in teaching and in saying and in action in the pages of the Gospels, and it's a project for communities to like work out and to discuss and talk about. And that very well may be a frustration to the impulse that asks, well, what is it at the core? Give me the definition so we can be, you just nail it down for me. Where I think it's one of those things that has to be worked out and navigated and negotiated in community spaces over time. And then also embodied in varieties of ways, depending on people's varied social situations. So like James, so when James writes at the very beginning of his letter, he says, "Let the brother or sister who is exalted glory in or own as their identity. Let them own as their identity their humiliation, and let the brother or sister in humble circumstances, let them own as their identity their exaltation." So there's not a one-size-fits-all Christian identity. Like, people coming from different social places, depending on how our societies arrange us, again, with regard to ethnic, racial realities, social class, and gender, depending on where we're coming from or how society has ordered us or placed value on us in corrupted ways, the cross is going to move us in different directions or do different things to us.
So it's going to raise up those that are downtrodden and marginalized, and it's going to bring low the high status, wealthy.
Yeah.
So the cruciform sort of impulse is to use the privileges and prerogatives we have, not for our own gain, but rather in self-sacrificial love for the betterment of others. That's the impulse.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Okay. So that impulse works itself out with Paul, like in Philippians 3, all of his qualifications prior to Jesus, he now considers rubbish. So that's lowering him.
Yeah.
That's him lowering or identifying himself as a slave or a servant, throughout his writings or whatever. So he's using those prerogatives and privileges. Now he's emptying himself of those and taking the lowest social location, so that he can serve his recipients, his audience, whatever. So, okay. So yeah, it's a narrative pattern that like plays itself out in social justice. That could be materially, I'm rich, so I give away money. That could be status. I don't consider myself high status, even though culture views me that way. I receive people of different status as brothers and sisters. That's the cruciform sort of impulse. Would you agree with all that?
Yeah, totally.
So we're looking at the fact that there are at least two sort of Christianities operating at work in the world. One is cruciform and one is something else, in the shape of the dollar sign, in the shape of the White House, in the shape of power or whatever. And only one of them obviously is from Jesus. One of the big questions we get, and this is the second part of the question, could you share some ideas on how we can best choose to respond and navigate with other Jesus people who are difficult and who we are tempted to deem outside of a cruciform life? So we get this question a lot. If our cruciformity is using privileges or prerogatives in self-emptying ways for the betterment of others, and there are other Christians who are boasting or marveling or exalting in the exact opposite path, what are cruciform postures towards those kinds of people? Like, how do we receive? How do we encourage? How do we deal with people who are understanding Jesus very differently? And Tim gave the thumbs down sign as one option.
I mean, I come up with a battery of discussion topics like golf or baseball or the torpedo bat or lawn darts or disc golf or ultimate frisbee or the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs, and just try to bore down on those topics and talk about them and ask good questions about them and have some laughs. Yeah, that's my strategy.
So to not engage at all with the differences, or
no, I don't. Personally, I do not. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I've said before, I don't ever try to change people. It's not people are not my I am the gospel's project. So I am my project. I'm not the gospel's agent in somebody else's life to fix them or make them like me. And my assumption is other people can teach me. I may be wrong. Here's how I see things. I also want to be wise in knowing that as part of as part and parcel of that other version of Christianity that you're talking about, or that other way of being Christian in the world that is sort of aggressive, power seeking, as part and parcel of that, there is an ongoing strategy of marshaling and accumulating rhetorical weapons to bait someone like me into discussion, and then to launch fusillade after fusillade at me and on me, and to draw me into endless argumentation. And there's also that way of being Christian, which I imagine is corrupt, but that way of being Christian has a safety mechanism within it to keep people in that way of being Christian. And that is to just simply never allow oneself to be influenced in any other way. So to my mind, I see engagement with people that are like that. And I have people that I love dearly that are sort of wrapped up in that way of being Christian. My main strategy is to have contact with them in ways that are loving and characterized by joy and delight and goodness, and joking about as many things I can find that are lighthearted as possible, and to resist being drawn into the morass of confusion and anger that doesn't have a way out. There's no way out. So for my own sanity and for my own protection of those encounters, I can encase those kind of encounters in goodness and joy and delight. I know how to do that. Focus on the torpedo bat. Focus on joking about stuff that we can find lighthearted. But I don't, thinking about Proverbs, like don't associate with angry people because you're going to become like them. Or, I mean, if I find folks that are genuinely inquisitive, I mean, if anyone wants to have a discussion, I'll have a discussion about anything that they want to talk about. But I'm very wary of being drawn into a discussion that I know is wired to leave me frustrated and is wired to leave them frustrated. And I imagine that folks that are wrapped up in that kind of Christianity are themselves captive to imagining that they need to have these kinds of conversations that they don't know will only leave them frustrated. And so to me, an act of charity and kindness is to just not engage with the worst impulses that have been excited within them by some other entity. So I think that that in my opinion, my very humble opinion, because I'm not a church authority that can weigh in on like what's Christian and not, I don't see the connection between that purported way of being Christian and anything in the New Testament. But that's just, and I could be wrong, but that's my conception of things. And I don't, when I engage with folks about a variety of topics, and this is very recent for me, when there are ways of talking that are invitations to engage in angry, grenade throwing, and I try to deflect and get it back on something fun. How are the kids? Hey, what happened to your uncle? Didn't he have that one procedure? I don't know. Talk about other stuff. Yeah. That's honestly my strategy, and I don't aim to sort of like draw other people into good resources or things that I find fruitful, because it's not that a lot of folks are sort of neutral or on the fence. I have found, at least that's been my experience. And so my experience is just be kind, be lighthearted.
Is there ever a place for the pointing out, welcome or not, that someone is not acting in line with the truth of the gospel? So I'm thinking of the social justice issue in Galatia. And here are Gentiles being hurt. They're being hurt by Peter's withdrawal from them. I mean, I can only imagine what that must have felt like. And so Paul feels obligated to respond. And so I'm hearing in an interpersonal way, I think there's great wisdom in what you're saying. But when that brand of Christianity is purveying real harm, is cruciformity deflection there, or is cruciformity something more assertive? And I don't mean assertive from a place of superiority. I know all of the let's assume all the nuances. I'm not joining them in anger. I'm not whatever. But it feels like because there is real harm associated with forms of Christianity that need to be called out as sub-Christian or not Christian at all. Is there room for that in your thinking?
Yeah, to me, it depends on like the venue or the arena. Like if it's if I'm talking to a relative over a family gathering, or if I overhear something like that, or I simply don't know what to do in situations like that, because
you're trying to maintain a personal connection.
Yeah, like what are you going to do? But if there's like a bonded and bounded, if there are community commitments, like if I'm in a church setting, or if I'm in a community where people have covenanted together to become and be the people of Jesus, that's a radically different situation. Like the ways that we, because that's a commitment to how we name the world, how we name people, how we identify ourselves, how we see others, and how we behave, and how we strategize and plan to do good in the world. And so if I was in a church where we've committed together to become the people of Jesus, that would be a venue in which it would be sort of pushing forward. It would be like a leaning straight into that reality, to the extent that I would go all the way, so if we're having discussion about, should we continue with this adoption of a refugee family, or if there were, I can't imagine. I'm trying to think in terms of if there was some kind of a strategic vision or strategic outreach that we just didn't do because certain people are filthy, or I don't even know how this would work in the church that I'm in. But if it were a church setting, that would be something where I would not dance around it. I would say we can't. This is like this is make or break stuff. So serving the poor, reaching out and offering hospitality to refugees, finding ways of embodying justice with regard to gender and social class, all of those things, to my mind, need to be in play in church settings. And if there's resistance or opposition, that's where things would, to my mind, or at least personally, if I was in a community like that, I'd want to say, this is something that we have to talk about and address, and I'm not going to just sort of like sit down about it. That this is sort of goes to the core of who we are. Or if I was in a class and things were said that were just out of line or hurtful or harmful, it's in those settings where I would be responsible to address those with assertiveness, for sure, because those are, with regard to cruciformity, if we just use that lens, a church setting, a church is a community of people that have come together and have been called together by God to be in the shape of the cross, to put ourselves all on the line for the other, just as God has completely put himself on the line for the other, who is us. And so we act like God in this very way as a community. And if there are folks in our communities that say, well, we see the other, we just don't like the other, we're not going to do that. To me, it's like, all right, so there's a community issue about whether to be the church or not. Or at least if I had any kind of a pastoral role, it would be call that out and like say we're going to talk about this until we're on the same page. I mean, so in a venue like that, or I mean, if I was at the school, I mean, I also can't imagine that. I mean, it's all, I'm one of like 9 white people at the school. I don't see, there's not a lot of venues where I can imagine this kind of thing happening, except, when I'm with certain folks that they're just not that kind of community. But so I think in a church community, that would be a big deal to me. I not you guys, but I mean, I've heard, I only listen to 1 or 2 podcasts consistently, but I've heard podcasters say this kind of thing. We don't like to talk about politics, but to my mind, just because politics and the Christian way are the same thing. The Christian way is a politics. I feel like now more than ever, but always, that's something that I will lean into and talk about fully and without reservation, putting myself on the line. So to me, that's being cruciform. But I don't know. So many of the church I'm in, I already knew had a commitment to a certain way of being Christian. This is why I'm part of it, because they already had concerted efforts dealing with the poor and refugee families, which makes me passionate about being part of it. I can't imagine in a more peaceful era. I can't imagine being in any kind of that kind of a church, any other kind of a church. But right now, for me, the only places where I hear a talk that just really is offensive or runs against the grain of what I imagine being Christian is just in settings where there's not covenanted relationships. So I just leave it. Go back to the torpedo bat.
Yep. That's the title of the episode, Torpedo Bat by Tim Gombis. Speaking of Tim Gombis, Tim Safford, these are issues that we are wrestling with day in and day out. What are your thoughts?
It's hard. I feel like I had this conversation in 3 different settings yesterday, whether it was in the classroom where, I was doing one-on-one conferences and so students will bring ideas, and then it's my job not to tell them what to write or tell them how to think about their topic, but to ask the questions that provoke them to think more or think deeper on a topic or an idea, and hope that they land in a place that I think is true. But regardless, they at least are putting some more substantive, thought into what they're doing. But it's like when there's presuppositions in Christian groups of egalitarian ideas, whether it's gender or race, or I feel like I see mostly social class stuff lately. It's hard. It's like those conversations get so hard to navigate if the core tenets of how we view each other as human beings are not the same. If that makes sense. Like, I feel like I keep running up against that. I was talking to folks last night, and it's like, we're trying to do this little communal gathering in our town. And so we did the first meeting last night. It's not a religious organization. It's just kind of gathering folks together to build community and then to learn how to serve or advocate in our larger community as needs arise. And I feel that people were just like, when we were asking them, like, what did you expect from this evening? A lot of them were like, well, I thought this was I came because I thought it was going to be an anti-Trump event. Like, how can we organize against Trump? And I was talking to some of them afterwards, and I was like, I spent almost all of my 20s and my 30s being against things and just railing against things and being angry and shouting a lot. I'm trying to mostly to no avail, but now I'm trying to figure out how I can posture myself in a way that is always advocating for something or for someone rather than against whatever. Because I just found like I was just hitting my head against the wall, whether it was in theological circles or, societal circles. So I don't know. That's kind of stuff I'm thinking about, like, as you're talking, is like a lot of the Christian conversations I get in, if our baseline is not based on people being seen as equal, then it's very hard to enter into the conversation because the foundation is just not the same. We're building from different places.
Yeah, I find that to be the case, and so in many ways for me this is just it's sort of a frustrating conversation to return back to, because I'm not currently, unless I'm like spending time with family, because I'm not in like white conservative evangelical spaces, I just don't run into like bigotry and power mongering and anger and resentment. So it's like I can't answer the question, how do you deal with people that are power mongering, exclusionary, resentful? How do you try to convince? I don't know. I don't do it. I'm not around them. I in my church spaces, I mean, this would be a struggle for me well, it wouldn't be in a sense, because I mean, I taught in an evangelical space and spoke from the scriptures how I saw things and from my convictions, and just said it how I saw it. And it was in a season in that evangelical institution where there was leadership that was like, yeah, we want this. This is what we want. This is what we want. And then all of a sudden it wasn't, and I was out. So,
Right.
and I have absolute, I have no regrets. So now that I'm out, I don't know how to help people navigate those spaces, because I've chosen not to be in them. I don't know. So I don't have counsel for it. In many ways, I want to say with the writer of Hebrews, come out from among them. I'm just get out of there. I don't know what do you say when you're, I mean, if you are in an antichrist community that calls itself Christian, that wants anything but to be in the shape of the cross, and then you want to say, well, how do I navigate a situation like this? I kind of want to say, well, what the are you doing there? Because I wouldn't be in one. I mean, back in a far milder politically, in a far less politically charged environment, I kind of saw where this was going, and it just was like, I remember telling a friend years ago, my presence in this place has a limited shelf life, and I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts, but I can see where this is going. And so, I mean, we're there, and I'm out. So I have no advice for people who have chosen to stay in. I imagine people who are in are doing it from good motives and are well intentioned. I don't judge anybody for choices they make, not at all. But I don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not in one.
Yeah. Those little kids you get to do gym class with.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Hey, listen. So I take the kids to gym, and I play catch with this one kid, Andre, who's really coordinated and likes to play catch. And I'll have you know, every once in a while, I'll tell him, I say, hey, Andre, go down to the other end of the court, and I'll go down to the opposite baseline, and I have done this 5 times, right? This is over the course of like the last 5 weeks. I've made 5 baskets with a football. Like, we play catch, and from the opposite baseline, I'll just loft the most gorgeous, pass.
I didn't know where this was going.
Yeah, I've made 5. And I love it when teachers come
Andre
through to go to lunch.
Nose,
I'll be like, hey, Mr. Brown, how much you think think I can make it? Like, no, you can't make that. I'm like, all right, here we go. Of course.
It's the little things.
It is. These
surprised.
are the highlights of my day. I just love it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you have not yet mentioned the championship of the Whitney Young Elementary mini golf tournament.
That's a big deal.
I'm looking at a picture from Facebook of a putt King with balloons and a Tim Gombis shaped man holding a golf club as he would a rifle. Yeah. You want to tell us just a little bit about that? I mean, speaking of Cruciformity, that doesn't look like that at all.
Yeah, they had a special day a couple weeks ago where they had an afternoon celebration. This is hilarious. They have all these positive reinforcements. So they had a day of celebration for all the kids who were not written up over the past month. So all those kids could do a variety of activities, and part of it was a miniature golf course. And I didn't know until late afternoon that there was actually a staff competition. So I was like, oh, see how I might want to go at that. So yeah.
It's kind of like a waffle party.
Yeah.
Oh, Severance comes back to that.
Yeah.
Dr. Gombis, we adore you. Thank you for being quick on your feet not being quick on your feet. Set theories now making appearance
edit this
over my
well
shoulder.
and make me sound with it and smart. I would really appreciate that.
Well, I've asked Tim to do that for me for 500 episodes, and he's refused. So you shall not pass.
You shall not.
Exactly. So, Dr. Gombis, don't hang up, but we just want to officially say thank you. Go check out Faith Improvised, where podcasts are sold. And do not buy his books on Amazon. He will personally hunt you down. But Power and Weakness is his latest, and it's marvelous. And Drama of Ephesians is pretty darn good too. So, love you, dude. Appreciate you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Seth, did you want to
Go
add
Giants.
something here?
Yes.
Okay, what do you got?
Peg mommy.
Pick a mommy, really? That's what we're doing now?
Yes.
No one knows what that means. I need something better from you. This has been an hour of Gombis. That's how you're going to lead it? That's how you're going to leave us?
Can I? I mean,
Can he? No? Okay. So we just asked you, Tim Gombis, to marry him.
Cool.
So he said okay. So there you go.
yes.
Fantastic.
Moving and shaking.
And
Got a
just
lot of pizza
so you
down
know,
here.
we like pizza.
Yes.
All right, everybody, check out Dr. Timothy Gombis. We appreciate you so much. See you next time.
Awesome.
Peace.
Peace. Dude, you're the best.
You guys rock.
No, this was so good.
Yeah.
I love that we'll start with a question. You'll take about 5 seconds to downshift, and then you'll go without stumbling for 10 minutes.
That's really wild.
So your brain is on fire. So we love
That's
it.
awesome. Hey, good luck to the Giants. Seriously, I mean, with the Padres and Dodgers undefeated so far, it's going to be a rough go. I was texting with.
What about my Guardians? What about my Guardians?
Yeah. How are they doing so far? They just got beat pretty badly by the Padres, didn't they? Swept.
They
Padres are
did.
cooking.
They did.
We just swept Houston, though. That feels good. Not that Houston's what Houston used to be.
You
but
guys have any idea what the Braves' starting record is? Just
Mm-mm.
they're like 0 and
0 7.
Yeah.
Oh my word! I mean, Braves fans. I'm gonna text a friend tonight and be like, "Oh my word, what's going on there?" Bobby
I have a
Cox
friend that's a
rolled over in
White
his
Sox
grave.
fan, and it's like just
Oh,
miserable all the time.
It's sad.
when's the Masters on?
Starting Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're not going to work that week either.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Steve's coming
Lot of
up Thursday
putt-putt.
night. We're gonna head to a sports bar and watch highlights of the first round. Watch the end of the first round anyway. So yeah, that'll be fun.
I love
Be a good
that.
time.
I love that. Dude, thanks for your time tonight. I know it's your bedtime. So it's been a good show.
Oh yeah. No, it's spring break. I'm going wild.
Nice.
Cool guys. Be well. Love you.